Hello, this is Tony Gorton, week 2 of EDU 662, talking about performance assessment. So what is performance assessment? Well, according to Lens, performance assessment is a fancy term for a simple concept, evaluating what you can do by observing you doing it. A performance assessment evaluates a product or performance, requiring some kind of constructive or creative act. In order to qualify as performance assessment, two things must be evaluated. One, a product or performance. Two, an application of a targeted skill or skills. When designing performance assessments, you need to keep three things in mind. So one, the outcome. So announcing what you hope that the learner achieves, specifying the targeted skill or standards to be measured. Often the outcomes are framed as learning targets or objectives. Two, demonstration of the outcome. This is the task or the assignment or the prompt. What is the learner asked to do, resulting in a product or performance that provides direct evidence of the targeted skill or standards. And third, measure of the outcome. The criteria for success must be established before the learner creates the product or delivers the performance. Typically, this is documented in the form of a rubric. And this is all according to Bob Lentz in his Transforming Schools Using Project-Based Learning. All right, how do I assess learners' progress towards standards with performance assessments? So here are the key questions that were outlined this week for us. So who designs performance assessments? Luckily, I get to design my own performance assessments. The district would like us world language teachers to use the same assessment for speaking and writing, but it is not mandatory at this time. How are performance assessments organized? In world language instruction, performance assessments are broken down into two main categories, speaking and writing. For listening, grammar, vocabulary, assessments are normally in the form of a multiple choice or bubble test. How many performance assessments are there and what does each one reflect? Well, my school district requires that I give a speaking and writing performance assessment at the end of each semester. Other than that, I can decide how many performance assessments I use in my classroom. I personally give my students at least one speaking and writing performance assessment per unit, and per semester that could be 3 to 4 units. So my students are very familiar with performance assessments because I use them all the time throughout the year and throughout the semester. How do the performance assessments relate to standards? Well, our performance assessments are linked to the ACTFL World Readiness Standards for Learning Languages, which I explained last week. Our end of the semester speaking and writing performance assessments align specifically with standard 1.3, which is presentational communication. How do the performance assessments relate to curriculum? The performance assessments at the end of each semester encapsulate and test upon the curriculum that was taught that semester. And how are the rubrics developed and used? Well, we teachers get to develop our rubrics with the other teachers in the district that teach the same world language. So I frequently meet with the other German teachers and we come up together with what we want the performance assessment to look like and then design the rubric together collaboratively. All right, strengths and challenges with performance assessments. We'll start with the negative. So my challenges specifically are that they take a lot of class time to have students prepare and present their speaking performance assessments. Also, students get really nervous about presenting orally, even if we've done these performance assessments all year. So at the end of the semester, they're big speaking performance assessment, they do it just in front of me, so it's not, in front of their peers as well, but even so, they still get really, really nervous about it. Another negative is that there's only me to grade them. For example, the Spanish teachers in our district, they grade each other's students' end of semester performance assessment. That way we can avoid grade inflation or bias, and I think that's just a really great way to assess performance assessments, to have somebody other than the student's regular teacher to assess them. Unfortunately, We don't have this in place for German at the time, mainly because most high schools only have one German teacher in the district. So in order for us to go and grade each other's students' performance assessments, there'd be some traveling involved and a lot of logistics. Whereas for the Spanish teachers, each high school has 3 or 4, and it's just really easy for them to, go to each other's room and assess these. But maybe one day we'll have this in place for German as well. And then the last challenge is students always tell me, oh, we just rather have a regular Scantron test. But unfortunately, or I guess fortunately, when you're testing language skills, you can't test their speaking and writing skills via a bubble test, no matter how much students would prefer that. All right, my upside. So as you can see, for me personally, I find a lot more positives than negatives with performance assessments. For world language, performance assessment is really the best way to determine a student's proficiency level in the language. So what do I mean by proficiency level? Well, ACTFL lays out the proficiency levels here with this graphic. It's kind of represented as this diamond shape, and then you have the levels here, novice low, all the way up to superior or distinguished. Distinguished really means a native speaker in that language. And then they also really clearly lay out where a student should be throughout their K through 12 language experience. So level 1, which means 1 year of high school or 2 years of middle school, they should all be here at the novice mid level. Some students will get to novice high. By level 2, everybody should end at novice high, where some students will be at that intermediate low level. At the end of level 3, all of the students should be at intermediate low. Some will be at the intermediate mid-level. And then if you notice for level 4 or 5 or AP, they're going to be at that intermediate mid. It's really hard to get past this level. That's the one that takes the most additional learning, or being in a country where you're surrounded by native speakers. It's hardest to move out of this level. At the end of AP, some students, especially students that have studied abroad or spent time in a country exposed to native speakers, will be at that intermediate mid. So if we go back here, at the end of high school, the student really is only going to be here on this pyramid. Some might be here. All right, another strength, the rubrics are extremely helpful in determining what a student's proficiency level is. So the ACTFL standards are very clear, and it's very easy for teachers and students themselves to just look at the rubric and know exactly where they are on the proficiency scale. Performance assessments also allow students to be creative and showcase their strengths as language learners. That's something I really like. And students as well, you get to see a different side of them when you allow them to be creative, yeah, which is really great. I really love collaborating with the other German teachers in the district to come up with the performance assessments. It's just a really fun process for me. And another thing, I guess, well, the best thing about performance assessments is there's really no way to cheat on them. It holds the student accountable for working hard towards proficiency. So you can't come up in front of me and cheat on your speaking test. It's just you're standing there in front of me, I'm asking you questions, and you have to respond in the target language. Another thing I really like is that students can create something that they can look back at, allowing them to see their growth and how their language skills are progressing. So we in the World Language Department often record our students' oral performance assessments, so they can go back and look over the years or over the semester how they are progressing and moving towards the different proficiency levels. Me personally, my goal for next year is to incorporate portfolios, so they have a digital way of storing all of their performance assessments, and then holding students accountable for them, as well as me tracking their language development. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then the last thing is that performance assessments are the closest thing to real-world experience for world language learners. All right, analyze the performance assessment planning template and performance assessment quality rubric. So after reading through both of these, I have to say I found them both extremely helpful. The planning template walks you through each step, ensuring that you're measuring exactly what you want to be. I personally like how the learning targets in 1A puts the targets into I can statements. The ACTFL standards we use already have I can statements that tell learners what they should be able to do at each proficiency level, and these mirror much of what is addressed in the Common Core State Standards, so I can just pick and choose from the ACTFL list and insert them here into this performance assessment planning template. So here's an example of what the ACTFL can-do statements look like. So these are some I can statements for the novice mid-level, and like I said, it'd just be really easy for me to take these and then plug them in here. Another thing I like is that it also has a section for accommodations and modifications. I think it's extremely important to think about all students when creating performance assessments. Also, in 4A, it asks for real-world experiences, an authentic experience, and for world language, our standards require us to use real-world experience in our performance assessment. So, just looking through this planning template, it's very, very very close to what we already do for world language, and it's very compatible with our ACTFL standards. As for the performance assessment quality rubric, I find it very user-friendly. By reading each description under the categories work in progress, ready for use, and exemplary, you can see if your performance assessment is ready to use or still needs some revising. My only criticism of this quality rubric was that it was a little cumbersome to read through the whole thing. However, for new teachers that are using performance assessments for the first time, or teachers that aren't sure if what they've created is ideal, it's a very, very great tool to use. I personally will be sharing both of these resources with my World Language Department colleagues, and I've already saved a digital copy on my school computer for easy access because I already know I will be going back and using both of these. All right, thank you very much for listening to my presentation today. If you have any questions, you can find me at the email below. I have also attached rubrics that I use in my classroom to assess performance assessments in this week's journal, so you can feel free to take a look at those as well. Thank you very much.